Merci à tous de votre présence pour cette discussion Génération Open. Welcome to everyone to the Generation Open panel. So we have the difficult task to make sure you stay awake after lunch and that you won't leave too early for the weekend. So please stay with us. We're going to have like a 30-minute discussion. I think that's going to be very interesting and I hope it's going to be a heated debate. I met with all the panelists early on this morning and they just have a lot of things to do and they don't agree with each other, which is super good. We're going to have like a 30-minute discussion and then we're going to keep like 15, 20 minutes for discussion, so for your question coming from the floor. And that will be actually the program for this first panel on open generation. So let's start. I would like to open up the discussion by just asking you very briefly to present yourself for the floor, the audience, to get to know you a little bit better. Very briefly, who you are, first name, last name, organizations, and how do you relate or not to the open generation? Ori, men's first. Go ahead.
Hello. So I'm Ori Peckelman. I work for A53. I'm the CTO of the company. And I'm from generation closing down the hose, modern open generation.
Hi. My name is Mikko Puhakka, basically out of Finland, but traveling quite a bit around the world. I don't really work for any particular company. I have about 6 different companies that I'm working with right now, ranging from pure open source plays to venture capitalists. So I have to confess that I'm not actually a techie, but rather a business person with interest. I mainly work right now in Europe and China, and a bit on the US, but mainly in Europe and China. And as to the part when I'm part of an open generation, I think it's relatively descriptive that I noticed that everyone here has either iPhones or iPads, and I carry around a book.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Dalborg-Delphis. I was born in France. I started my first company in Europe, in Paris, at the mid-'80s. And then I started a company in '87 in Silicon Valley. And I've been the CEO of various companies in California. And I'm also helping a lot of startups as a board member and advisor.
Hello, my name is Sunil Abraham. I'm with the Center for Internet and Society in Bangalore. We focus on policy research, all the boring stuff like IT law, copyright law, patent law, broadband policy. But we also do some amount of exciting research around Wikipedia and digital natives, and I guess that's what brings me to this panel.
Hi, my name is Axel Tessandier. I was invited by Louis for this panel because I was part of an innovation program called Paloma 5. They put 30 people from Generation Y in a big factory during 7 weeks. I was one of the residents there to think about what will be the future of work for the digital generation and how we want to work in the future.
Okay, thank you. So guys, to kick off the discussion, so I'd like to read out very briefly a few words from, Chris Messina himself, just to place the bar high for the for the quality of the discussion. And this is totally related to Generation Open, or actually our topic for discussion. So Generation Open, it's not merely an age thing, it's a mindset thing. It's about having all your references coming from the land of the internet rather than TV, and becoming accustomed to bilateral communications in place of unidirectional broadcast forms. So, we are in France. We always start by definition to sound like we are very rational. So I'd like to get actually your input and your feeling about this statement. Do you think it's actually capturing the essence of Generation Open? Do you agree with this statement, or maybe you disagree? Mikko, you want to take the ball first?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a mindset.
Not me, with Chris Messina, okay.
Okay, but then when you started referring to specific technologies or tools like that, it's something that's enabled by internet and so forth. I don't agree with that, but I agree that it's a mindset.
I agree that it's a mindset, but it didn't start yesterday. For me, Generation Open started with the invention of TCP/IP. The first time that people had a common protocol to interconnect computers, they had the essence of social networking as we know it now. And what has happened, it was first technology, it was first interest of students and teachers, and it progressively became mainstream. So basically it took 20 years to adopt the technology, just as the train.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
I simply could not agree more on the TCP/IP issue. So a very interesting thing for me is that when the internet started, it was a distributed social network. And it had the protocol stack to support it, and it was working really, really nicely. So you had something called Finger, and you could connect to a server, which usually represented already a small group of tightly knit persons working together. A server would represent maybe 10 people, maybe 20, maybe 40, basically no more than that. And you would have Finger, and you would ask, where's Joe? And you would get the email of Joe, and you could communicate with Joe. And it worked really, really well. And there was NNTP that worked really, really well also at the time. And in a weird way, we have kind of two internets now. The first one, and that worked really, really well like that, but it was just for us, right? Just for a very select group of people. And then, and this was really Generation Open. It was, open collaboration happened really, really fast and worked really, really well. And then we kind of had the Middle Ages of the internet, in the middle of which we are now. Big monopolistic American companies, that thing. And we're talking again about the early internet. So.
Do you actually say that generation is not a matter of generation eventually, that Generation Open, it's more that mindset that Marilyn, you were mentioning? There's always this discussion around, are you a digital native or not? No, if you are under 15 years old, you are Generation Open. If you are above 15 years old, which is mostly the case of us today, you cannot actually understand what this generation is about. Axel?
Yeah, no, the only thing, I don't know if I'm part of the Generation Y. I guess that's the reason why I went to Paloma 5, because we were all between 18 and 30. And the very funny thing, when people came to the camp to talk about digital native or Generation Open or the millennial, or you have so many, many, many words right now to define ourselves. It's always people outside our generation, like to try to create a case or a box because it's easier to define something you don't really understand very well, to try, and finally we don't define us, we just act as we want, we just play with the new tool, with this internet and all this digital world and tool, but we never define ourselves except by acting and playing with the tool in itself. So I have no clue what is Generation Open or what is Generation Y or what does it mean. I know that for us, we have this big tool, very powerful, that the value are probably the same that 30 years old. I mean, when you talk about Woodstock and everything, yes, they already talk about the impact they can have on the world, being green and all this stuff, but the context is very different. Because we know that internet and my computer and my iPad, it's not that it's better than the book, but it just, in a way, it's very easy and very useful to connect myself with other people. If we want to talk about something, share, we have a cause, or we want to have an impact, it seems, maybe it's just an impression or a feeling, but it seems possible.
I think there's a bit of conflation between the term digital natives and the broader concept of openness. And this comes to us mostly from the work from the Berkman Center. Professor Uz Gasser and John Palfrey have produced a book called Digital Natives. But there is also a criticism of this particular conflation from another professor in the US called Shiva Vaidyanathan. And he says that what Berkman Center and other such think tanks are doing is falsely attributing a certain political agenda to a generation And that policy agenda is really their own policy agenda, and they're taking anecdotal evidence from this younger generation to prove their point. I'd like to say one story which might give us another insight to this emerging generation, and this is a story of my friend and his 6-year-old son walking the streets of Bangkok. And in many Asian countries, you have pirated movies sold in the night markets, and the policemen were raiding the night market, and the pirates were packing all their CDs and putting it in their bags and running away. And Ji Hong, who's the little boy, he asked his father, "Pa, why are they running away?" And the father said, "Well, it's because they're selling illegal movies." And Ji Hong asked his father, "Pa, but we also buy movies from these criminals." And the father said, "Well, what to do? I work for a non-profit organization. I can't afford to buy the legal version all the time." And then Ji Hong thinks about it for a while and comes up with a solution. And he says, "Pa, let's stop buying from these criminals. Let's just go home and download it from the internet." You know. So I think that's what the rules and the framework that we have, they just don't understand.
So you mentioned that political agenda, or whatever is being using or serve as a purpose, a good one or not. So do you think that there are some goals that Generation Open is supposed to achieve? Are there like goals that generation has to be succeeding in achieving, versus the other generation, like the Woodstock generation or the May 68 generation? Are we expecting something from that generation that they will be more successful than the others? Miko?
Just follow up a bit to the point that Axel was making that I actually liked. It's about defining your identity. I've noticed lately that I've started to think about actually my online identity better, and I've started to define it better, that people are finding, or the relevant people to me are able to target questions to me much better, and are able to communicate with much larger groups of people than before. Before it used to be like a bunch of people, and they had like no agenda in mind when they approached me, and it was very confusing. Now that I started to define better as to who I am and put it online, that people are able to target, that they want to talk to me because of these things, and that makes communication much easier.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about your question, if the Generation Y has different goals. I think I have no clue what will be the future. Nobody here knows about that. You can talk about it but you're still in the present, and when you talk about the future, generally it's so different 20 years after you talk about it and wanted to define it and have an idea about it could be. But I think my generation doesn't have any goals, but I think we know we can have an impact, and it's already changed many things, because it's not, you don't seem like a big dreamer when you start like a new project or a cause or an initiative or anything, because it could be very big very quickly if you are good and you find your audience or your tribe, because finally internet is not worldwide, it's just a community of different communities and tribe. And if you find your tribes or your audience and you find the good words, because the very, very addictive thing on the web is being a voice. It's you can be a voice very easily, and I don't know anybody in the world that don't like that. Especially if you are not very, it's not very easy for you to be listened and have an audience. It's very something addictive, and I think that the difference, I don't know if we have any goals or anything, but it doesn't seem like a big dream to think that you can have an impact. Maybe change the world, who knows? You know what I mean? I mean, in Palomar 5, when I arrived, the thing I was really surprised, that the fact that between 18 and 30, we were at 14 nationalities from all over the world. I was the French, very French, I heard during the camp, and they all come from India, from USA, Canada, many, many different countries in the world, but all of them were there applied, because they think, yeah, I can sing during 7 weeks about the future of work, and I will explain to all the sponsors, Dutch Telecom, BMW, and everybody at the end of this camp what you could do, who we are, and what you have to change. And it seems to be very natural for them say, yeah, because I have a voice, I know the tool, the new tool, and I think I can have an impact on that. Maybe better than, it was not that being better or not, but you have a voice.
I think one of the goals of Generation Open is hacking the global attention economy. If you were to Google for "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys, then Google will not produce the Backstreet Boys video as the first result. Instead, it would produce a video made by two Chinese boys in their hostel room mocking the Backstreet Boys video. That is the first search result, and that is also the YouTube video with more viewership than the original Backstreet Boys video, which is produced by a multi-billion-dollar studio. So I think this is the beginning of what they're doing. They're reasserting themselves as the political force, and we see it in this informal fashion, the Chinese Backstreet Boy video, and in a much more formal fashion, which is the Pirate Party in Sweden with 12% of the adult male vote and 6% of the adult female vote.
Oh, yeah, so you clapping at what Sunil was saying. Can you expand on your clapping?
But now I disagree. So I think it's clear that technologies have a political payload. So you do a scientific guy, a computer guy, does some kind of technology for reasons that are totally not politically motivated. He has a problem. He wants to solve the problem. TCP/IP solves problems like nuclear missiles falling on your infrastructure, and you can still fire back some nuclear missiles. I mean, it was designed for that, for killing a lot of people. Or maybe to still have your emergency services running. It seems that, that has nothing to do with the political payload of TCP/IP. It enables some other stuff, and it's really, really hard to discover in real time what is the political meaning of a particular technology. And this is why, basically, I don't know how many stuff around the internet and our agenda has the word open in it, but probably 80%. 80% is open something, and open basically is good, right? I mean, we feel good when we say open, and closed seems bad. These two Chinese guys are kind of part of this optimistic and great open tidal wave. If we get these two Chinese guys in the dorm, do we already have democracy in China? And I'm not sure. I think we have somewhat stupid and not really, really funny, not professionally done content that is kind of on this enormous tidal wave of the fact that you can simply get the attention of 1 million persons on something extremely stupid, because simply there's a bunch of people in the world, and most of them are now on TCP/IP. And although you've just got not even a seventh of a promille of the world population, I mean, this is not the Declaration of Independence of the United States, that it is not Descartes. It's just, in the impact, in the number of people that have an impact, just 1 million, 10 million. What is 10 million persons? 10 million persons on YouTube saw it. Okay, it's nothing at all. So, in the emails exchanges before, there were some very interesting points made by Sunil about the different kinds of open. And I think that's part of the thing is that, French or not, we do really need to define and kind of open government. Sounds good kind of open. Open data, probably good kind of open. Open companies.
Sunil, actually, you're calling, and Marianne, you want to make a, sorry, please add.
I like Sunil's example very much. What it shows is that you can build groups, ad hoc groups, the way you want, and they won't last. You can make them last if you adjust all the time. So the beauty of social networking is the ability to define as many groups as you want, and define yourself within these groups. and basically circumscribes these groups. You can have several identities, and you can be more powerful than a big production house of a given record.
So that the tribes that Axel were mentioning is like, okay, you can create or find your own tribe very easily, and it doesn't mean that you have to stick with the tribe for the rest of your life. And this is maybe what is so puzzling about that. It's like the aggregation is very quick, but the disaggregation too is very quick.
It depends how you manage it, and it's also great for corporations. You build your new sort of customership this way, the same way as individuals build their own tribes.
Miko, you?
Yeah, I want to just put a bit of a business twist into the conversation, and it's the challenge that I have. It's almost being like a schizophrenic at times that I find a lot of these issues extremely cool as a person, and I like them and I embrace them and so forth. But on the other hand, in order to be successful in what I do, I should be able to put it in a business context, and that's not easy. There's an example of a Finnish project called Star Trek that I don't know if any of you have heard of, but it's basically a parody of Star Trek and Babylon 5. It was initiated by 7 guys in the middle of nowhere in Finland who had no background in making movies, and they had no money. But they had time and they had energy, and they wanted to create a full-length feature film with all the special effects. Well, other people found this idea cool as well. And at the end, they got something like 300 people committing and helping out in making the movie. And then they made the decision that they had actually decided very early on that it was going to be available for free online. And with the possibility of adding and changing things in a kind of open way. So today it has been downloaded something like 5 million times plus. I don't know how many people have seen it, but it's the most watched Finnish film ever. There are other contributors that have changed the texting so that it's available. I think at least 2 or 3 versions in French. But for instance, if you want to watch a film where Finnish is spoken and the subtitles are in Klingon, that's also possible. Now, the interesting business twist about this case was that it was a project. They did it for 10,000 euros. And it kind of then got the attention of big name Hollywood studios and so forth. How was this possible? But it also got the attention of some other people that didn't want to download the movie and started sending them emails that, where can I buy the DVD? And they were like, why buy the DVD? It's for free on the net. But, well, they got so many requests so that then they actually started printing the DVDs and ended up selling them something like €500,000 worth of DVDs. Now
we have a business model.
Producer of this film, who's a business thinker as well, called his business model "business by accident." And I think that's the confusing part that I'm looking as a strategic consultant or investor. How can I invest or look into things that happen by accident?
Wow. What a question. Anyone want to build or unbuild on Nico's example? So it sounds like this generation open. There's a lot of those examples were totally great and fun in a way, which, as Henri was saying, are just breaking taboos or just they don't really care about those taboos and they just go and do it. So, Marilyn or Ori, sorry, yeah, going to add
again. I'm not sure this is a replicable business model. So I kind of believe that if so we've got Star Trek and Babylon 5 taken, so we need to do Star Wars. Okay, by the way, there were a bunch of projects like this also around Star Wars, because the brand management is kind of really smart around Star Trek and Star Wars and permitting people to do this kind of stuff. I don't think it's replicable. I don't think it's an accident either. It's an anecdote. And each of these anecdotes will work once. Diaspora, again, is a very interesting anecdote. Okay, it's so these four guys that on the same week in which CNN had a report on the privacy issues of Facebook, presented their crowdsourcing project and got more than $200,000 in order to do that. And probably something like $20 or $30 million worth of free marketing to do the project. I don't think that the next guys around will get the $20 or $30 million worth of free publicity, and the $200,000 is totally anecdotal. It's totally enough to make a startup that might change the world and do everything Generation Open is supposed to do. But I think that what we are seeing is, yes, there is a tidal wave, so there is a very strong mutation of the society currently, and all of the examples we are seeing are just examples, just anecdotes. They don't represent the new model that will happen. They just represent a system in an unstable status in which anecdotes are terribly amplified. Now, I really strongly believe that when you are in the kind of a very strong mutation phase, that the future is not forcefully written. So I'm not sure, for example, that the open thingy will stay open for a very long time. And I'm not even sure if it's good that it will be. I mean, today we've seen that there is a very strong tendency towards commoditizing privacy. So Apple
what do you mean by that? Yeah, commoditizing the privacy. Can you?
Apple bought Polaroid, which 2 weeks ago they do facial recognition. Google already has this technology too. It simply means that if ever anywhere on the web there is an image of you and you can get the name, that your first and last name have become a total commodity. There is no longer any kind of price that is needed in order to have, in any kind of context where your face is visible, your first and last name. Now, before that, before it became a commodity, now this week, there was a price to be paid. A company, for example, to have your last and first name, they needed to invest a lot of money. So a lot of the marketing budget went in order to identify you, to have a user base. So you will enter their CRM thing. Now, so when privacy and privacy identity, when they become a total commodity, when it becomes totally free, that probably has an effect. Now, I'm not sure that this tidal wave is unavoidable. I'm not totally sure that there are no political or technical means in order to put people in prison when they do that. But
Marilyn, you seem to be nodding.
Yes, but same fashion as when internet started. You had to trademark your name right away. You have to trademark everything related to you, your genes. And this is where we go.
Ori?
Or you can simply put...
you can't decide not to do it.
So are we too
you
open?
can send the army. You can bomb people. If I would like to have a law that says that if someone has my genetic profile on file, they get a missile into their building and it blows up and my genetic profile is no longer... This is what the monopoly of legitimate violence. We have states for that. So basically, I'm not sure that you cannot pass laws that prohibit people from having your genetic profile. So I don't need to trademark it, but you don't need bombs.
So
well, you have bombs before too, anyway. So I'm not sure it changes that radically.
Sunil, please.
Since Ori is dismissing the whole generation open phenomena as an anecdote, I can't use anecdotes to counter that. So I will have to use a little more scientific method. I think if you were to use Google and search for any big brand object, you will find that a couple of links on that first 10 search results that you get will come from the mega corporation.
So, brand object, can you, an example?
So Barbie doll.
Okay.
You search for Barbie doll on Google. 2 links will come from the company that makes the Barbie doll. And all the other 8 links will usually come from community-produced content, from social media websites. So I'm not totally sure that the impact of the generation on the attention economy is anecdotal. But you might be right that converting it into a sustainable business model, that might still be at the anecdotal stage.
Yeah. First, I wanted to talk about what you call anecdotes or example. And I think it's Clay Shirky. He said it's only after the chaos, when you are in this trouble moment where you just try to define a system, that you know if anecdotes or example was a turning point or nothing at all. But at least you have to experiment. It could be just an anecdote or anything or nothing at all, but it's just this guy of diaspora or the other business models. They was just playing, trying, experimenting, going to the table and play. And just going to the table, it's like when you play poker. Already going to the table, you are doing something. You don't know if you will win or not. But my generation want to try and experiment. Maybe it's just fun for us. You just try and experiment. Who cares? It will be a business model, nothing at all, failing or anything else. You just play and you try it. So it was the first thing. And yes, about the fact that the privacy stuff and you have to define yourself, give all this information about you and everything. I don't know why. I try to be scared by that, but I am not. So I don't know if, because if you read like so many articles when all the camera arrived in the street, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I used to live in London 2 years, and you are 400 camera on your face during the day, just walking like that. You will be on a film 400 times one day. And you have so many articles about that 10 years ago and everything. And say, my God, it's always the same thing. It's just about changing. If you change or put... No, don't look at me like... What I mean is that privacy and all this stuff, I try to be scared, but most of the thing I put online, it's because I want to. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not because people want to use it against me. Sometimes it could be good for me. You know what I mean? So it's just a question of mindset sometimes. And I try, to be scared and say, my God, they can use that and all this stuff against me. But maybe I'm wrong. But for the moment, everything that I put online or I share, I'm okay for that.
I tend to agree with this. This was the beginning of blog the same way. I mean, people started to blog in 94 and 95, and they wanted to disclose what they wanted to disclose. And there was basically the same spiel about privacy in 95 when Dave Weiner explained that there will be billions of websites, exactly the same, almost the same words as today, actually.
I want to be true to my pledge and just keep some time for questions from the floor. It's like 10 or 5 to 3. So, Miko, unless you are very brief, and then and then we can close.
I'll be very brief.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever tried to raise money for something, but if you go with a pitch to a venture capitalist saying that I just want to play around a bit and it might turn into a business, you probably won't get funded. You need something a bit more concrete than that. Yeah.
Okay. Just to conclude, like between us, and then obviously please ask questions to the panel. So I will also close on another quote from Chris Messina on the same topic that says, "If we are generation open, then we are the optimistic generation." So guys and gals, are you optimistic?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm optimistic, I guess. No, I'm just curious. So I guess it's coming with that, and I don't know. I know I have a responsibility. I don't know if that means I could be optimistic or not, but I have a responsibility to do something, and I guess it's exciting at least, even if you can always be optimistic about it.
I guess I'm a bit of both. Listening to the stories from the other panelists, that makes me an optimist, but sometimes I wonder if we are paying a price for openness. I'll tell you a small story about Twitter. In South Africa, a hashtag started to trend, and that hashtag was Things Darky Says. This was the hashtag. Darky is not considered a racial slur in South Africa. Many persons of color are quite proud to call themselves darky. In the US, darky is a racial slur. African Americans complained, the hashtag was deleted. So it isn't as if openness comes with zero cost. Sometimes it destroys diversity. Sometimes it means that elites can capture the system. So there are all sorts of complications to openness. And unless we are very vigilant, we might pay a very heavy price for being open.
Marilyn, are you optimistic?
I would tend to believe that openness or closeness are happiness agnostic, actually. So we can be very close and be optimistic. You can be very open and be pessimistic. I wouldn't even link both terms.
Nico?
Well, personally, I'm optimistic. But if you look at various cultures, I think that also varies from place to place. Finns and the Nordic people by nature tend to be a bit pessimistic about anything and everything. There was this would actually only happen in Finland. There was a article on Newsweek where they rated the various countries, and Finland came number 1. Now, the initial reactions from the Finnish people were that this cannot be true, and by the second day that the article had come out, someone had actually discovered that there was a mistake in Newsweek calculations, that we were really number 2, that we cannot be number 1.
Ori, are you optimistic?
I'm complicated. I believe strongly that there is a possibility of making all of this into something good. So, for example, technically constructing a Twitter system that is distributed and therefore that works really well with a hashtag that will stay locally in South Africa and will not need to pollute the general discussion, and therefore will not need to delete it. So I think that in order to do the openness thingy, we need really to have an open infrastructure, and that also resolves a lot of the privacy issues. Because if the infrastructure itself is open, probably it's of a much smaller scale. You said you weren't afraid. So this is a very optimistic thing. You're not afraid of... There are issues of scale. You were seen 400 times by these cameras, but the software that was connected behind these cameras wasn't still very good. Now it's becoming really, really good. Apple now has Polaroids, and they will propose to you when you are walking a music that you like in the street. Now, the genius thing, you will be walking in the streets and you will only hear music you like. This is a very frightening thing for me, because I really hated the music I like. I've already listened to it. I mean...
Okay, no, I just want to leave like a few minutes for questions from the audience. Well, please, it's your time to talk or to openly express your thoughts, please. If there's any mic circulating, yes, there's a mic coming on your right side. Thank you very much.
I'm interested to understand what are the top 3 commercial implications of these changes we're talking about coming from Generation Open.
So the top 3 commercial impact that actually those changing could bring, I guess, if you look through the angles of cooperation, which Marilyn is something that you are very always excited to talk about.
I don't know. No, I think being genuine, being honest will be the first big change. Like, it's not only about having a strategy and build a big, strong commercial campaign or anything. If you lie, if it's just a campaign, if it's just a strategy, nobody will follow it, because transparency, honesty, being genuine, believing in something, it's really the value I can see right now. And it's not only about the product, it's about the value behind your product. That's why I think, for instance, everything's become, Apple, I know it's a very closed system and everything, but still, my generation seems to be very crazy about this company because the value behind. Like, look like them, and it's cool, and it's fun, and it's easy, and it's simple, and it seems to be genuine. Steve Jobs really believes in what he's doing. He doesn't care about, he doesn't have like a big strategy. At least it looks like that. We are not there to start a discussion about Apple and all this stuff, because it's always a debate. But the fact is, being genuine and honest could be a very, very good commercial strategy. That's my opinion.
I think the first big lesson for corporations is that you can no longer build messaging that is static. Social media, by definition, is heuristic. And you've seen all these big mistakes that corporations have done after launching Facebook profiles, etc., and then entering into big fights with their consumer base over the content. So I think that's one big lesson. I think another lesson is increasingly you would get politically implicated. So the whole discussion about openness and censorship and the role that Google plays in China, etc., you might think that you're only in the business of technology, but before you know it, you're part of the US foreign policy system. So those were 2 points I wanted to raise.
Very close to what you are saying. For the corporation I help as a strategy consultant, we use social media mostly to better know our customers and to better target them and to define products which are closer to the expectations.
Nico?
Right. I think it's important to understand that there are some new rules and skill sets that are needed in order to thrive in this era, so to say. If you look at the history of the open source movement and the relationship that the large corporations have had with it, for years and years and years, the message was that you cannot really trust the communities, that they are not getting paid, they are not incentivized, they can just leave it. It's a very fragile proposal that you cannot do mission-critical things based on open source. Now, I did one paper where I looked at the issue and kind of looked at the life cycle of various open source technologies, and there's actually no difference to the life cycle of open source technologies compared to the traditional proprietary offerings, except that maybe it could be even better, that they are just more sustainable than the traditional offerings. It's very hard to accept as a traditional business that you are dealing with a community that you have no contract with, that can walk away at any point of time. That how can they stay with a project for 10, 15 years and never get paid? So that's one issue. The other issue is that if you look at the successful companies that are doing good things in the kind of the open space, you start to see that they have titles such as community manager or community leader that are handling the relationships between the community interest and the business interest, and try to balance that out. And that's very important of understanding that that's needed, and it's a fragile relationship. The problem is that I haven't seen anyone offering, for instance, classes in any university how to become a community manager or community leader, but everyone wants to hire them.
I would believe there'll be 1 billion of them, but I have not. But just as an answer on I think there are new products that will appear, and so for an example, if identity or privacy is a commodity, then there are probably people that will be okay to pay for some luxury. Like also there is a kind the privacy will real privacy will be kind of an incredible luxury. You will have to pay a lot of money to maintain. If never I don't get to have my bombs, and so there are a lot of interesting new products that are going to come up. One of the questions that I ask myself is there any reason in the world that there will be a company that is around in information, so everyone that is in software, but anything else that doesn't produce physical goods? Is there any reason in the world a company that has this domain will be more than 50 persons? And I'm not sure that there is any reason. I mean, efficiency model that gives a reason for most of you guys to be working in thousands. I mean, IBM or Microsoft or Apple. Apple do produce some physical stuff. So probably. And there's a bunch of stuff to sell to people, building these other kinds of ways to work with information. And so we are in a mutation, and if I had a product, I wouldn't tell you. I would be closed.
We have time for one last question, yeah? Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Your question, please, yeah.
I just wanted to react on the subject of privacy and publicity. You said that, your generation was not frightened by this new social activity.
I don't know if I'm generational or not. I say I try to be scared, but I am not right now. Maybe I should, but I cannot force myself. And I know it's a big concern. I'm crazy about diaspora project because I don't like Facebook at all. Not because I'm scared for my own privacy and everything, but I don't trust the guy, so I don't trust the service.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that privacy is, it's more complex in that it's not just about being frightened about what the data is about. And it's not only about who controls the data and what the data is. It's also about how we as a society are defining norms about what should be public and what should be only shared between people. Because, you were talking about sharing information, and there are different layers in sharing information. And I just wanted to raise that point.
Yeah, but I always think that I decide what I want to share. And there is many information I'm okay to share, and other I want to share with few people, and even information that I don't want to share with anybody else except me.
But to which extent that choice is yours when the software you are using is not in your control?
Yeah, but there is some cells in my mind that are not related to a server that I can keep for me, and if I don't want to share, even putting something online is already my own choice. Not taking this opportunity is still my choice. There is many, many, many things that you cannot find about me online. Even probably what I sing right now, what I did yesterday. Yeah, you can find it, actually. But, it's because I want to. And there is many things I don't want to share. That is not related with the server or anything. It's actually true online and offline. So for me, it's exactly the same process.
The minute you are on internet, you are tracked, whether you know it anyway or not. So you are targeted, retargeted by default. This was the internet from day one.
Yeah. Just to build on the point Marilyn just made, the moment you have a connection to an ISP, given data retention policies in most countries, they know exactly what you're doing on the internet. So from the part of the world I come from, we are more scared of the government than we are of Facebook.
Of course, unless you use very strong encryption and you have an infrastructure, and we do have the infrastructure, we're just not using it. And the nice thing about strong cryptography is that you kind of have blogs that say that the NSA or the Israeli government have ways to break this stuff, and they can read it. They can't. It works.
But if you're the only 20 Indians using encryption amongst 20 million broadband users, then the police will come to your house and beat the private key out of you.
So I think we want to close on this. Miko, yeah, just to close on those very optimistic words.
I think that the challenge for the open generation is that while we like to think that we are open, there are still barriers that are set to us. Some are personal, from the personal point of view, and some are from someone else. That it doesn't have to be countries like China, which is controlling a lot of things, but it's also, I've noticed that when I get too close to things that people are uncomfortable with and they would like to talk about, even in Finland that's supposed to be super open, then they say that, well, you are right, but just don't disclose that to any place. So it's you can be open, but as long as you kind of follow the rules.
Okay. We're going to close on this note. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you very much for the audience. Please stay put here for the next conference. Thank you.